Ba 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 ba. Hey Slim, am I being heard yet? He speaks. I'm heard for once in my miserable life. Slim 00131 Zepster Commander X24. All y'all got numbers in your name? How many of you are there? Dark poetry. Maybe we'll go to some poetry. I got some fairy tales. Don't look at the edition. The edition technically isn't. Technically, the collection's public domain, but this edition, it's public domain. I promise. Who's gonna come after me for a collection that was published in 1890, just because the physical copy I have? I know. I got some fairy tales, and they're not Grimm's fairy tales, so I don't know if it's gonna be quite as bad as he plucks Ashputel's sister's eyes had their eyes plucked out by birds, but they're still fairy tales from 1890, so probably gonna have some weird stuff in there. I don't know where to start. If you want dark, we should start with not a lawyer, technically, but you're reading the text might count as transformative content and thus counted as fair use. I don't know about that. Can you make the chat bigger? Always with the chat. Oy vey, I tell you. I don't know why it shrunk from yesterday. That didn't make it bigger. That didn't make it bigger at all. Much better. I can't hear that. I heard a loud sound just then. Don't worry about that. Thanks. Oh, there's a sound when there's a new follower. Whoops. I thought I turned that down. Or turned that off. I don't want sounds and stuff. That's so annoying. When you're watching streamers and every 10 seconds goes ding! Every 5 seconds, that makes me want to die. That's why I don't watch streamers, ever. Just in case I hear that. Yeah, I don't know how to make this any bigger. Let me try extending it this way. Maybe that was Kitty. Meow. I can't believe I've already got 10 million followers in one day. Hard to believe I'm the biggest streamer on Twitch after one 1 hour stream, but it's true. Booba booba. A booba booba. Oh, he made a face like he was angry. Bye, Kitty. I don't think that made it any bigger. The text. This guy is good, says up there. He's serious about stream notice. I don't know what any of that means. These words are completely foreign to me. Okay, let's try. I'll try to make chat bigger for you. Scale. Okay, that probably will help. 200%. That's at least a little better. If there's a... Let's see. There's an option for sound, too. I just don't want to have it making a sound every time I read. I will get into the reading eventually. Don't worry. I'm not just going to sit here editing my stream. Brightness and contrast, color and opacity. Okay. This guy is good. Just move the chat to the middle. I think I made it bigger. I don't want it to make a sound every time there's a new follower, since I'm going to be getting so many of those, since I'm so funny and charming. Alerts. I sent a test. Oh, goodness gracious. Did it make a loud sound? I can't hear anything. There they are. I don't know what that means. I don't know what any of this means. Yes, it did. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Gotta love that. You see, I could have fixed all of this in my free time. Instead, I'm wasting, the chats are showing in the middle, probably. Chat is like on your shirt. I was insulted for this shirt today. Perfect. What I need is the sound to go away. I wish I was a master streamer already and I didn't have to learn all these things. I wish there was just an off button, honestly. Mr. Clam Chowder. Why do, since we're troubleshooting, let's see how your chat handles this. Oh no. This is about to be something grotesque. This is a family-friendly stream. We're reading bedtime stories here. Loud sound. How come there's no sound option on the alert? Okay, let's see. Oh, GIF. Picture, GIF. Okay. To the middle, like on your shirt. Alerts. Okay, I'll just turn all the alerts off. These nuts. That's just a brand of nuts. You know, mixed nuts, cashews, almonds, peanuts. It's not inappropriate. What's inappropriate about nuts? Oh, somebody might have an allergy. You gotta be careful about that. Okay, I'm gonna test another, make another test sound, and if the sound makes a noise, childish. If the sound makes a noise here, tell me. I can see it doing it on the audio, I think. There was supposed to be an apostrophe denoting the person. Yeah, D. Is this making a sound? Well, you know, that might still make a sound. No sound. Okay, good. Then we're good. I don't need all these alerts. Who needs alerts? Ceramic Green Chicken. Hello, Ceramic Green Chicken. Thanks for the follow. No sound. Oh, good. That should be everything, right? I was told yesterday that I should have a fireplace, so here's some fire. I don't have a place for it yet, but I put it in this candle here, so light a candle next to you if you have one. Hello from Ceramic Green Chicken. Welcome, welcome. I don't know if I know you IRL. I told you. Some people I do, some people I don't. I don't know. A lot of people on here I know IRL. The lighting is great. Thank you. I've got like 3 lamps on, so my energy bill is going. I thought I just saw the word Bavlorna in the name Bavlorna. Candle made all the difference. Alright. Zepster. I wonder who Zepster is. I don't want to call people by their real name just by accident. Zepster said he wanted dark. Gotta get some donations in. Well, you better start donating. Don't worry, you'll be making bank soon enough. Yep. With this, I mean this stuff here. So far the stream's been gold. So, yeah, I don't know. So far it's been gold. So, yeah, definitely with this stuff I'll be raking in the bills. Everybody loves books, right? That's a big market. Books. In today's day and age. But Zepster said he wanted dark. So let's go to this story. The Voice of Death. Books. Can we get a books in chat? The Voice of Death. This is a short one too, so perfect. Perfect to begin with, in case anybody else joins. I hate books, says Commander X24. If you hate books, the wooden clocks followed me this minute. Thank you, 3 wooden clocks. Your name sounds like something out of one of these fairy tales. Maybe that's why you joined. It's like 3 blind mice went up to the wooden clock. 3 blind mice isn't in this collection, but some of these I actually recognize. Jim Henson, the guy who did the Muppets, did another show where he did a bunch of fairy tales with Muppets pretty much, but not the like Kermit characters or anything. He did another show. It was called like Legends or something like that. It was really good. I saw a few episodes in school, and it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor like that John Green quote. I never read any John Green. But this Jim Henson show was really good, and I can never find it anywhere online, and I really want to watch it again because it was, I remember it being really entertaining. He did a lot of classic fairy tales, and not the stuff you're used to. He didn't do, there probably was, but I saw stuff that was kind of off the beaten path, like stories I had never heard before. So I got to find this show and rewatch it. But The Voice of Death. A few pages here. Maybe we'll get right into it here. It's got a picture. I don't know about the pictures on this one. With the edition thing, kind of iffy on the pictures. But let's begin. It begins classically. Once upon a time, there was what there was. And if nothing had happened, there would be nothing to tell. So in those days, there lived a man whose one wish and prayer was to get rich. Day and night, he thought of nothing else. Until one day, his prayers found God in a kindly mood, and he granted them. Well, once the man was rich, he took it into his head that he did not want to die. And so he decided to set out in search of a land where there was no death. He got ready for his journey, took leave of his wife, and started. Whenever he came to a new country, the first question that he asked was whether people died there. And when he heard they did, he set out again on his quest. At last he reached a country where he was told the people did not even know the meaning of the word death. Our traveler was delighted, and said, "But surely there are great crowds of people in your land, if no one ever dies." "No," they replied, "there are not great numbers, for you see from time to time a voice is heard calling first one and then another, and whoever hears that voice gets up and goes away and never comes back." "And do they see the one who calls them?" he asked. "Why shouldn't they?" was the answer. Well, the man was amazed when he heard that the people were stupid enough to follow the voice, though they knew that if they went when it called them, they would never return. And he went back to his own home and got all his possessions together, and, taking his wife and family, he set out, resolved to go and live in that country where the people did not die, but where instead they heard a voice calling them, which they followed into a land from which they never returned. For he had made up his own mind that when he or any of his family heard the voice, they would pay it no heed, whoever it was who called. After he had settled down in his new home and had got his affairs in order, he warned his wife and family that, unless they wanted to die, they must on no account listen to a voice which they might some day hear calling them. For some years everything went well with them, and they lived happily in their new home. But one day, while they were all sitting comfortably at home, his wife suddenly started up, exclaiming in a loud voice, "I'm coming! I'm coming!" And then she began to look round the room for her fur coat. But her husband jumped up, and taking firm hold of her by the hand, held her fast, and reproached her, saying, "Don't you remember what I told you? Stay where you are unless you wish to die." "But don't you hear that voice calling me?" she answered. "I am surely just going to see why I am wanted. I shall come back directly." So she fought and struggled to get away from her husband, and to go where the voice summoned. But he would not let her go, and had all the doors of the house shut and bolted. When she saw that he had done this, she said, "Very well, husband. I will not try to go now." So her husband believed that it was all right, and that she had thought better of it, and had got over her mad impulse to obey the voice. But a few minutes later she made a sudden dash for one of the doors, opened it, and darted out, followed by her husband. He caught her by the fur coat, and begged and implored her not to go, for if she did, she would certainly never return. She said nothing, but let her arms fall backwards, and suddenly bending herself forward, she slipped out of the coat, leaving it in her husband's hands. He, poor man, seemed turned to stone as he gazed after her hurrying away from him, and calling at the top of her voice, she ran, "I'm coming! I'm coming!" When she was quite out of sight, her husband recovered his wits, and went back into his house, murmuring, "If she is so foolish as to wish to die, I can't help it. I warned and implored her to pay no heed to that voice, however loudly it might call." Well, days and weeks and months and years passed, and nothing happened to disturb the peace of the household. But one day the man was at the barber's, as usual, being shaved. The shop was full of people, and his chin had just been covered with a lather of soap, when suddenly, starting up from the chair, he called out in a loud voice, "I won't come, do you hear me? I won't come!" The barber and the other people in the shop listened to him with amazement, but again, looking toward the doors, he exclaimed, "I tell you once and for all, I do not mean to come, so go away." And a few minutes later he called out again, "Go away, I tell you, or it will be the worse for you. You may call as much as you like, but you will never get me to come." and he got so angry that you might have thought that someone was actually standing at the door tormenting him. At last he jumped up and caught the razor out of the barber's hand, exclaiming, "Get me that razor, and I'll teach him to let people alone for the future." And he rushed out of the shop in pursuit of that one that he said was calling him, even though no one else could see him. The poor barber, determined not to lose his razor, pursued the man, and they both continued running at full speed till they got well out of the town, when all of a sudden the man fell head foremost down a precipice and was never seen again. So he too, like the others, had been forced, even against his will, to follow the voice that called him. The barber, who went home whistling and congratulating himself on the escape he had made, described what had happened, and it was noised abroad in the country that the people who had gone away and had never returned had all fallen into that pit. For till then they had never known what happened to those who had heard the voice and obeyed its call. But when crowds of people went out from the town to examine the ill-fated pit that had swallowed up such numbers, and yet never seemed to be full, they could discover nothing. All that they could see was a vast plain, and looked as if it had been there since the beginning of the world. And from that time the people of the country began to die like ordinary mortals everywhere else. Dang. What's about that one here? Strange story. I'm coming. I'll be right there. Just kidding. I'm not really about to die. I got you there, though. I tricked you. What's the moral of that one? You're gonna die, so you better not even worry about it. Would be my guess on the moral of that one. What do you think? I mean, you guys. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna die eventually, so why try to run away from it, I guess, is the moral. That'd be my interpretation of it. I don't know if anybody else has something there. They think something else on that. I don't mind discussing the story. I would like to discuss the stories we read on here. I would probably not. That wouldn't be that bad a country to move to. Instead of people just dropping dead, they just suddenly go, "Oh, I'm out of here." Yeah, live while you're alive. Yeah. I mean, you don't even get a choice, even in that country, so you are eventually not going to be alive one day. Very strange to think about. Very hard to think about. But you and everyone you know will be dead eventually. So make the time. Make hay while the sun shines, as they say. Let's see. There's more stories in here. The voice of death. Let's see. Some of these are kind of longer than others. Let's go with another. The Three Dwarves. The Three Dwarves could be good. Who doesn't like dwarves? Brother and sister. Jack and the Beanstalk. The Six Sillies. I like sillies. Let's go with the Six Sillies. This is a short one. I don't know what a silly is, aside from just a silly, just what silly means. But the Six Sillies. And it's got a woman dreaming while her pot overfloweth. That's the image here. Yeah, classic. The Six Sillies. The Six Sillies is me when I clone myself 5 more times. Once upon a time, classically start. Once upon a time there was a young girl, 37 years old, and without ever a sweetheart. because she was altogether stupid. Oh, come on. One day, however, a young man arrived to pay his addresses to her, and her mother, beaming with joy, straightway sent her daughter down to the cellar to draw a jug of beer. As the girl never came back, the mother went down to see what had become of her, and found her sitting on the chair, her head in her hands, while beside her the beer was running all over the floor from the tap, which was wide open. "What are you doing here?" asked the mother. "I was thinking what I shall call my first child after I am married to that young man. All the names in the calendar are taken." The mother sat down on the staircase beside her daughter and said, I will think about it with you, my dear." The father, who had stayed upstairs with the young man, was surprised that neither his wife nor his daughter came back, and, in his turn, went down to look for them. He found them both sitting on the stairs, while beside them the beer was running all over the floor from the tap, which was wide open. "What are you doing there? And all this beer running over the cellar?" "We were thinking what we should call the children that our daughter will have when she marries that young man. All the names in the calendar are taken." "Well," said the father, "I will think about it with you." As neither mother nor daughter nor father came upstairs again, the lover grew impatient, and went down into the cellar to see what they could all be doing. He found them all three sitting on the stairs, while beside them the beer was running all over the floor from the tap, which was wide open. "What in the world are you all doing sitting down there and letting your beer run all over the cellar?" "Yes, I know, my boy," said the father, "but if you marry our daughter, what shall you call your children? All the names in the calendar are taken." When the young man heard this answer, he said, "Well, goodbye, I'm off. When I've found 3 people sillier than you, I'll come back and marry your daughter." So he continued his journey, and after walking for some time, he reached an orchard. There he saw some people knocking down walnuts and trying to throw them into a cart with a fork. "What are you doing there?" he asked. "We want to load our cart with our nuts, but we can't manage to do it." The lover advised them to get a basket and to put the walnuts in it, so as to turn them into the cart. "Well," he said to himself, "I have already found someone more foolish than those 3. So he went on his way, and by he came to a wood. There he saw a man who wanted to give his pig some acorns to eat, and was trying with all his might to make him climb up the oak tree. "What are you doing, my good man?" asked he. "I want to make my pig eat some acorns, so I can't get him up the tree, and I can't get him up to go up the tree. If you were to climb up and shake the acorns, the pig would pick them up." "Oh, I never thought of that." "Here is the second idiot," said the lover to himself. Some way farther along the road he came upon a man who had never worn any trousers, wah, wah, and who was trying to get himself into a pair. He had fastened them to a tree and was jumping with all his might up in the air so that he should hit the 2 legs of the trousers as he came down. "It would be much better if you held them in your hands," said the young man, "and then put your legs, one after the other, in each hole." "Dear me, to be sure! You are sharper than I am, for that never occurred to me." And having found 3 people more foolish than his bride, her mother, and her father, the lover went back to marry the young lady. And in course of time they had a great many beautiful children. See, if that's the end. If I was writing that story, I would have mentioned something about the kids' names at the end, what they named the kid, because I was a little curious about what they were going to name the kid, because all the names in the calendar are taken. But I guess. Welcome to the blur zone, the blur dimension. Ooh. This is a long one, but it's got a lot of good pictures in it. I'll say... Oh, it's got dragons, geese, and peacocks, and bats, and crows pulling carriages, a fairy princess, some sort of witch-looking creature. Were the kids silly, too? That one... Oh, yeah, who knows? Maybe there's a sequel. Looks like there's a haughty prince in this one. This one looks pretty good. The Princess May Blossom. Kind of long, though. Kind of long. I mean, I'll try to get another short one or two in first. And then maybe I'll end on a longer one. Although, I guess I am going to be doing this for a haughty prince. The acorns don't fall from the tree. Yeah, that... If you're trying to get your pig to climb up a tree, you're probably an idiot. That's the moral of this story: is don't be an idiot. Don't be a silly. Okay, what else do we got? Let's see. I'll read some names out. Yeah, don't be a silly. Let's see. The little good mouse. The three princesses of Whiteland. I think the author just hates silly people. Everybody hates silly people, unfortunately. There's nothing harder in this world than being a silly man. Let's get another story going. I like reading stories. I love reading stories. Ooh, this one sounds cool. And the picture is good on this one. Hard to see, kind of hard to see. A man in chains. A dark bearded man in chains. The death of Koshi the Deathless. That title doesn't make any sense. In a certain kingdom, there lived a Prince Ivan. He had 3 sisters. The first was the Princess Maria. The second, the Princess Olga. The third, the Princess Anna. When their father and mother lay at the point of death, they had thus enjoined their son, "Give your sisters in marriage to the very first suitors who come to woo them. Don't go keeping them by you." They died, and the prince buried them, and then, to solace his grief, he went with his sisters into the garden green to stroll. Suddenly the sky was covered by a black cloud. A terrible storm arose. "Let us go home, sisters," he cried. Hardly they got into the palace when the thunder pealed, the ceiling split open, and into the room where they were came flying a falcon bright. The falcon smote upon the ground, became a brave youth, and said, "Hail, Prince Ivan! Before I came as a guest, but now I have come as a wooer. I wish to propose for your sister, the Princess Maria. If you find favor in the eyes of my sister, I will not interfere with her wishes. Let her marry you in God's name." The Princess Maria gave her consent. The falcon married her and bore her away into his own realm. Days follow days, hours chase hours, a whole year goes by. One day Prince Ivan and his 2 sisters went out to stroll in the garden green. Again there arose a storm cloud, with whirlwind and lightning. "Let us go home, sisters," cries the prince. Scarcely they had entered the palace when the thunder crashed, the roof burst into a blaze, the ceiling split in twain, and in flew an eagle. That's my eagle sound. Probably just blew out the audio. Hail, Prince Ivan! Before I came as guest, but now I have come as a wooer. And he asked for the hand of the Princess Olga. Prince Ivan replied, If you find favor in the eyes of the Princess Olga, then let her marry you. I will not interfere with her liberty of choice. The Princess Olga gave her consent and married the eagle. The eagle took her and carried her off to his own kingdom. Another year went by. Prince Ivan said to his youngest sister, Let us go out and stroll in the garden green. They strolled about for a time. Again there arose a storm cloud, with whirlwind and lightning. Let us return home, sister, said he. They returned home, but they hadn't had time to sit down when the thunder crashed, the ceiling split open, and in flew a raven. The raven smote upon the floor and became a brave youth. The former youths had been handsome, but this one was handsomer still. Well, Prince Ivan, before I came as a guest, but now I have come as a wooer. Give me the Princess Anna to wife. I won't interfere with my sister's freedom. If you gain her affections, let her marry you. So the Princess Anna married the raven, and he bore her away into his own realm. Prince Ivan was left alone. A whole year he lived without his sisters. Then he grew weary and said, I shall set out in search of my sisters. He got ready for the journey. He rode, and one day he saw a whole army lying dead on the plain. He cried aloud, If there be a living man there, let him make answer. Who has slain this mighty host? They replied unto him, a living man, All this mighty host has been slain by the fair princess Maria Morevna. Bum, bum, bum. Prince Ivan rode further on, and came to a white tent, and forth came to meet him the fair princess Maria Morevna. Hail, prince, says she, whither does God send you, and is it of your free will or against your will? Prince Ivan replied, Not against their will do brave youths ride. Well, if your business be not pressing, tarry a while in my tent. Thereat was Prince Ivan glad. He spent 2 nights in the tent, and he found favor in the eyes of Maria Morevna, and she married him. The fair princess Maria Morevna carried him off into her own realm. They spent some time together, and then the princess took it into her head to go a-warring. So she handed over all the housekeeping affairs to Prince Ivan, and gave him these instructions. Go about everywhere, keep watch over everything, only do not venture to look into that closet there. Now, he couldn't help doing so. The moment Maria Morevna had gone, he rushed to the closet, pulled open the door, and looked in. There hung Koshi the Deathless, fettered by 12 chains. Then Koshi entreated Prince Ivan, saying, Have pity upon me, and give me to drink. 10 years long have I been here in torment, neither eating nor drinking. My throat is utterly dried up. The prince gave him a bucketful of water. He drank it up and asked for more, saying, A single bucket of water will not quench my thirst. Give me more. The prince gave him a second bucketful. Koshi drank it up and asked for a third, and when he had swallowed the third bucketful, he regained his former strength, gave his chains a shake, and broke all 12 at once. "Thanks, Prince Ivan," cried Koshchei the Deathless. "Now you will sooner see your own ears than Marya Morevna." And out of the window he flew in the shape of a terrible whirlwind. And he came up with the fair Princess Marya Morevna as she was going her way, laid hold of her, and carried her off home with him. But Prince Ivan wept full sore, and he arrayed himself, and set out a-wandering, saying to himself, "Whatever happens, I will go and look for Marya Morevna." One day passed, another day passed. At the dawn of the third day he saw a wondrous palace, and by the side of the palace stood an oak, and on the oak sat a falcon bright. Down flew the falcon from the oak, smote upon the ground, turned into a brave youth, and cried aloud, "Ha! Dear brother-in-law, how deals the Lord with you?" Out came running the Princess Marya. The names confuse me. Joyfully greeting her brother Ivan, and began inquiring after his health, and telling him all about herself. The prince spent 3 days with them, and then he said, "I cannot abide with you. I must go in search of my wife, the fair Princess Marya Morevna." "Hard will it be for you to find her," answered the falcon. "At all events, leave us your silver spoon. We will look at it and remember you." So Prince Ivan left his silver spoon at the falcon's, and went on his way again. On he went one day, on he went another day, and by the dawn of the third day he saw a palace still grander than the former one, and hard by the palace stood an oak, and on the oak sat an eagle. Down flew the eagle from the oak, smote upon the ground, turned into a brave youth, and cried aloud, "Rise up, Princess Olga! Hither comes our brother dear." The Princess Olga immediately ran to meet him, and began kissing him and embracing him, asking after his health, and telling him all about herself. With them Prince Ivan stopped 3 days. Then he said, "I cannot stay here any longer. I am going to look for my wife, the fair Princess Marya Morevna." "Hard will it be for you to find her," replied the eagle. "Leave us a silver fork. We will look at it and remember you." He left a silver fork behind, and went his way. He traveled 1 day, he traveled 2 days, and at daybreak on the third day he saw a palace grander than the first two, and near the palace stood an oak, and on the oak sat a raven. Down flew the raven from the oak, smote upon the ground, turned into a brave youth, and cried aloud, "Princess Anna, come forth quickly, our brother is coming." Out ran the Princess Anna, greeted him joyfully, and began kissing and embracing him, asking after his health, and telling him all about herself. Prince Ivan stayed with them 3 days. Then he said, "Farewell, I am going to look for my wife, the fair Princess Marya Morevna." "Hard will it be for you to find her," replied the raven. "Anyhow, leave your silver snuff-box with us, and we will look at it and remember you." The prince handed over his silver snuff-box, took leave, and went his way. 1 day he went, another day he went, and on the third day he came to where Marya Morevna was. She caught sight of her love, flung her arms around his neck, burst into tears, and exclaimed, "Oh, Prince Ivan, why did you disobey me, and go looking into the closet, and let out Koshchei the Deathless? Forgive me, Marya Morevna, remember not the past. Much better fly with me while Koshchei the Deathless is out of sight. Perhaps he won't catch us." So they got ready and fled. Now Koshchei was out hunting. Toward evening he was returning home. when his good steed stumbled beneath him. "Why stumblest thou, sorry jade? Scentest thou some ill?" The steed replied, "Prince Ivan has come and carried off Marya Morevna." "Is it possible to catch them?" "It is possible to sow wheat, to wait till it grows up, to reap it and thresh it, to grind it to flour, to make 5 pies of it, to eat those pies, and then to start in pursuit, and even then to be in time." Koshchei galloped off and caught up Prince Ivan. "Now," he says, "this time I will forgive you in return for your kindness in giving me water to drink, and a second time I will forgive you, but the third time beware, I will cut you to bits." Then he took Marya Morevna from him and carried her off. But Ivan sat down on a stone and burst into tears. He wept and wept, and then returned back to Marya Morevna. Now Koshchei the Deathless happened not to be at home. "Let us fly, Marya Morevna." "Ah, Prince Ivan, he will catch us." "Suppose he does catch us. At all events we shall have spent an hour or 2 together." So they got ready and fled. As Koshchei the Deathless was returning home, his good steed stumbled beneath him. "Why stumblest thou, sorry jade? Scentest thou some ill?" "Prince Ivan has come and carried off Marya Morevna." "No!" "Is it possible to catch them?" "It is possible to sow barley, to wait till it grows up, to reap it, then thresh it, to brew beer, to drink ourselves drunk on it, to sleep our fill, and then to set off in pursuit, and yet to be in time." Koshchei galloped off, caught up Prince Ivan. "Didn't I tell you that you should not see Marya Morevna any more than your own ears?" And he took her away and carried her off home with him. Prince Ivan was left there alone. He wept and wept. Then he went back after Marya Morevna. Koshchei happened to be away from home at that moment. "Let us fly, Marya Morevna." "Ah, Prince Ivan, he is sure to catch us and hew you in pieces." "Let him hew away. I cannot live without you." So they got ready and fled. Koshchei the Deathless was returning home when his good steed stumbled beneath him. "Why stumblest thou? Scentest thou an ill?" "Prince Ivan has come and carried off Marya Morevna." That's horse noises. Koshchei galloped off, caught Prince Ivan, chopped him into little pieces and put them into a barrel, smeared it with pitch, and bound it with iron hoops, and flung it into the blue sea. But Marya Morevna he carried off home. At that very time the silver things turned black, which Prince Ivan had left with his brothers-in-law. "Ah," said they, "the evil is accomplished sure enough." Then the eagle hurried to the blue sea, caught hold of the barrel, and dragged it ashore. The falcon flew away for the water of life, and the raven for the water of death. Afterwards they all 3 met, broke open the barrel, took out the remains of Prince Ivan, washed them and put them together in fitting order. The raven sprinkled them with the water of death. The pieces joined together, the body became whole. The falcon sprinkled it with the water of life. Prince Ivan shuddered, stood up, and said, "Ah, what a time I've been sleeping!" "You'd have gone on sleeping a good deal longer if it hadn't been for us," replied his brothers-in-law. "Now come and pay us a visit." "Not so, brothers. I shall go and look for Marya Morevna." And when he found her, he said to her, "Find out from Koshchei the Deathless whence he got so good a steed." So Marya Morevna chose a favorable moment and began asking Koshchei about it. Koshchei replied, beyond thrice 9 hills, in the 30th kingdom, on the other side of the fiery river, there lives a Baba Yaga. She has so good a mare that she flies right round the world on it every day. And she has many other splendid mares. I watched her herds for 3 days without losing a single mare, and in return for that the Baba Yaga gave me a foal. But how did you get across the fiery river? Why, I've a handkerchief like this. When I wave it thrice on the right hand, there springs up a very lofty bridge, and the fire cannot reach it. Marya Morevna listened to all this, and repeated it to Prince Ivan, and she carried off the handkerchief and gave it to him. So he managed to get across the fiery river, and then went on to the Baba Yaga's. Long went he on without getting anything either to eat or to drink. At last he came across an outlandish bird and its young ones. Says Prince Ivan, "I'll eat one of those chickens." "Don't eat it, Prince Ivan," begs the outlandish bird. "Some time or other I'll do you a good turn." He went on farther and saw a hive of bees in the forest. "I'll get a bit of honeycomb," says he. "Don't disturb my honey, Prince Ivan," exclaims the queen bee. "Sometimes I'll do you a good turn." So he didn't disturb it, but went on. Presently there he met a lioness with her cub. "Anyhow, I'll eat this lion cub," he says. "I'm so hungry I feel quite ill." "Please, let us alone, Prince Ivan," begs the lioness. "Some time or other I'll do you a good turn." "Very well, have it your own way," says he. Hungry and faint he wandered on, walked farther and farther, and at last came to where stood the house of the Baba Yaga, perched on the legs of a chicken. Round the house were set 12 poles in a circle. On each of 11 of these poles was stuck a human head. The 12th alone remained unoccupied. "Hail, Granny!" "Hail, Prince Ivan! Wherefore have you come? Is it of your own accord, or on compulsion?" "I have come to earn from you a heroic steed." "So be it, Prince. You won't have to serve a year with me, but just 3 days. If you take good care of my mares, I'll give you a heroic steed. But if you don't, why, you mustn't be annoyed at finding your head stuck on top of the last pole up there." My kids are crying. Don't mess with Baba Yagas. Prince Ivan agreed to these terms. The Baba Yaga gave him food and drink, and bade him set about his business. But the moment he had driven the mares afield, they cocked up their tails, and away they tore across the meadows in all directions. Before the prince had time to look round, they were all out of sight. Thereupon he began to weep and to disquiet himself, and then he sat down upon a stone and went to sleep. But when the sun was near its setting, the outlandish bird came flying up to him and awakened him, saying, "Arise, Prince Ivan, the mares are at home now." That wasn't the voice before, but whatever. The prince arose and returned home. There the Baba Yaga was raging at her mares and shrieking, "Whatever did ye come home for?" "How could we help coming home?" said they. "There came flying birds from every part of the world, and all but pecked out our eyes. Well, well, tomorrow don't go galloping over the meadows, but disperse amid the thick forests. Prince Ivan slept all night. In the morning, the Baba Yaga says to him, Mind, Prince, if you don't take good care of the mares, if you lose merely one of them, your bold head will be stuck on that pole. He drove the mares afield. Immediately they cocked up their tails and dispersed among the thick forests. Again did the prince sit down on the stone, wept, and then go to sleep. The sun went down behind the forest. Up came running the lioness. Arise, Prince Ivan, the mares are all collected. Prince Ivan arose and went home. More than ever did the Baba Yaga storm at her mares and shriek, Whatever did ye come back home for? How could we help but coming back? Beasts of prey came running at us from all parts of the world, and all but tore us utterly to pieces. Well, tomorrow run off into the blue sea. Again did Prince Ivan sleep through the night. Next morning the Baba Yaga sent him forth to watch the mares. If you don't take good care of them, says she, your bold head will be stuck on that pole. He drove the mares afield. Immediately they cocked up their tails, disappeared from sight, and fled into the blue sea. There they stood up to their necks in water. Prince Ivan sat down on the stone, wept, and fell asleep. But when the sun had set behind the forest, up came flying a bee, and said, Arise, Prince, the mares are all collected. But when you get home, don't let the Baba Yaga set eyes on you, but go into the stable and hide behind the mangers. There you will find a sorry colt rolling in the muck. Do you steal it, and at the dead of night ride away from the house. Prince Ivan arose, slipped into the stable, and lay down behind the mangers. While the Baba Yaga was storming away at her mares and shrieking, Why did ye come back? How could we help but coming back? There came flying bees in countless numbers from all parts of the world, and began stinging us on all sides till the blood came. The Baba Yaga went to sleep. In the dead of the night, Prince Ivan stole the sorry colt, saddled it, jumped on its back, and galloped away to the fiery river. When he came to that, he waved the handkerchief 3 times on his right hand, and suddenly, springing goodness knows whence, there hung across the river, high in the air, a splendid bridge. The prince rode across the bridge and waved the handkerchief twice only on the left hand. There remained across the river a thin, ever so thin, a bridge. When the Baba Yaga got up in the morning, the sorry colt was not to be seen. Off she set in pursuit. At full speed did she ride in her iron mortar, urging it on with the pestle, sweeping away her traces with the broom. She dashed up to the fiery river, gave a glance, and said, A capital bridge. She drove on to the bridge, but had only got halfway when it broke in 2, and the Baba Yaga went flop into the flames of the river. There truly she did meet with a cruel death. Prince Ivan fattened up the colt in the green meadows, and it turned into a wondrous steed. Then he rode to where Marya Morevna was. She came running out and flung herself on his neck, crying, By what means has God brought you back to life? Thus and thus, says he, now come along with me. I am afraid, Prince Ivan, if Koshchei catches us, you will be cut in pieces again. No, he won't catch us. I have a splendid heroic steed now. It flies just like a bird. So they got on its back and rode away. Koshai the Deathless was returning home when his horse stumbled beneath him. What art thou stumbling for, sorry jade? Dost thou scent any ill? Prince Ivan has come and carried off Marya Morevna. Can we catch them? God knows. Prince Ivan has a horse now which is better than I. Well, I can't stand it, says Koshai the Deathless. I will pursue. After a time he came up with Prince Ivan, lightened on the ground, and was going to chop him up with his sharp sword. But at that moment Prince Ivan's horse smote Koshai the Deathless full swing with its hoof, and cracked his skull, and the prince made an end of him with a club. Afterwards the prince heaped up a pile of wood, set fire to it, burnt Koshai the Deathless on the pyre, and scattered his ashes to the wind. Then Marya Morevna mounted Koshai's horse, and Prince Ivan got on his own, and they rode away to visit first the raven, then the eagle, and then the falcon. Wherever they went, they met with a joyful greeting. Ah, Prince Ivan, why, we never expected to see you again. Well, it wasn't for nothing that you gave yourself so much trouble. Such a beauty as Marya Morevna one might search for all the world over, and never find one like her. And so they visited, and they feasted, and afterwards they went off to their own realm. The end. I know. Not so deathless after all. I guess he doesn't die. He can be killed, but he won't die, because he was sitting there with no water. It's got a nice little picture of Ivan in here. There he is. Prince Ivan. Ooh, what? There it is. Nice little picture of Prince Ivan. The Deathless. Koshai the Deathless. The silly gooses. Yeah, those silly... Those sillies. That one was kind of long. Let's try to find a short one. Very, a lot of these fairy tales, they're very much so just, one thing happened, and then another thing happened, and then another thing happened, and then those three things paid off. And then 3 more things happened, and then those 3 things paid off. But it makes the point to repeat all the 3 things that happened. But this is, of course, for the kids. You know, this is for the children. You know, 2 viewers here, apparently. My viewer count is never accurate. I don't know what's... I don't know. Whatever. Prince May Blossom. That one's even longer. See these, Here, I know one. This is one of the ones that Jim Henson did. Was it the 3 brothers? Ooh, the Master Thief sounds like a good one. But let's find the 3 brothers, I think it was. Or the 12 brothers. A little bit more than 3. 265. Yeah, Koshai the Deathless really did not live up to his name. Ooh, I like the pictures on this one. I'm going to read this one. Oh, excuse me. Pardon me. How disgusting of me. Filthy creature. Went back. This is one called Drake's Tail, which I think is a duck. Because there's a picture of a duck holding a stick. There's a duck with a stick in this. There's a duck with a stick in it. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I never heard nothing so silly as a duck with a stick. Drake's Tail. Drake's tail was very little. That is why he was called Drake's Tail. But tiny as he was, he had brains, and he knew what he was about, for having begun with nothing, he ended by amassing 100 crowns. Now the king of the country, who was very extravagant, and never kept any money, having heard that Drake's tail had some, went along one day in his own person to borrow his hoard. And my word, in those days Drake's tail was not a little proud of having lent money to the king. But after the first and second year, seeing that they never even dreamed of paying the interest, he became uneasy. So much so that at last he resolved to go and see his Majesty himself and get repaid. So one fine morning Drake's tail, very spruce and fresh, takes the road singing quack, 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 when shall I get my money back? He had not gone far when he met his friend Fox on his rounds that way. Good morning, neighbor, says the friend. Where are you off to so early? Oh, I am going to the king for what he owes me. Oh, take me with you. Drake's tail said to himself, one can never have too many friends, and then said, I will, says he, but going on all fours, you will soon be tired. Make yourself quite small, get into my gullet, and go in my gizzards, and I will carry you. Oh, happy thought, says friend Fox. He takes up bag and baggage, and presto, is gone like a letter into the post. Completely reasonable. And Drake's tail is off again, all spruce and fresh, still singing quack, 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 when shall I have my money back? He had not gone far when he met his lady friend Ladder leaning on her wall. Good morning, my duckling, says the lady friend. Whither away so bold? I'm going to the king for what he owes me. Oh, take me with you, Drake's tail said to himself. One can never have too many friends. And then, I will, says he, but with your wooden legs you will soon be tired. Make yourself quite small, get into my gullet, go into my gizzard, and I will carry you. Happy thought, says my friend Ladder, and nimble bag and baggage goes to keep company with friend Fox. And quack, 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 Drake's tail is off again, singing and spruce as before. A little farther he meets his sweetheart, my friend River, wandering quietly in the sunshine. So it's you, my little cherub, she says. Where are you off to with your cocked tail, so lonesome on this mucky road? No, I'm going to the king, you know, for what he owes me. Oh, take me with you, Drake's tail said to himself. One can never have too many friends. And then, I will, says he, but you who sleep while you walk will soon be tired. Make yourself quite small. Get into my gullet and go in my gizzard, and I will carry you. Ah, happy thought, says my friend River. She takes up bag and baggage, and glow, 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 she takes her place between friend Fox and my friend Ladder. And quack, 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 Drakestail is off again singing. A little farther on, he meets Comrade Wasp's nest, carrying out maneuvers with his wasps. Well, good morning, my friend Drakestail. Oh, the wasp voice. Well, good morning, friend Drakestail, said Comrade Wasp's nest. Where are we bound for, so spruce and so fresh? I am going to the king for what he owes me. Oh, take me with you, Drakestail says to himself. One can't have too many friends. I will, says he, but your battalion to drag along. You will soon be tired. Make yourself quite small. Go into my gullet. Get into my gizzard, and I will carry you. By Jove, that's a good idea, says Comrade Wasp's nest. And by the left quick march, he takes the same road to join the others with all his party. There was not much more room, but by closing up a bit they managed, and Drakestail is off again singing. He arrived thus at the capital, and threaded his way straight up the high street, still running and singing, quack, 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 when shall I get my money back? To the great astonishment of the good people, right up to the king's palace. He bangs with the knocker, tock, tock. Who's there? Asks the porter, putting his head out of the wicket. It's me, Drakestail. I want to speak to the king. Speak to the king? That's easily said. The king is at dinner and won't be disturbed. Tell him that it's me, and he knows very well why I've come. The porter shuts his wicket and goes up to say all this to the king, who was just sitting down to dinner with a napkin round his neck, accompanied by all his ministers. Very good, said the king, laughing. I know what he's about. Let him come in, and put him with the turkeys and chickens. The porter goes down again. Please be so kind as to enter. Good, said Drakestail to himself. I shall now see how they eat at court. This way, says the porter. One step further. There you are. How, what? In the poultry yard? Fancy how cross Drakestail was. Ah, so that's it, says he. You just wait. I'll see that you receive me. Quack, quack, quack. When shall I get my money back? But turkeys and chickens are creatures who don't like people who are different from themselves. When they saw the newcomer, and what sort of fellow he was, and when they heard the noise he made too, they began to look black at him. Come on now. What is it? What does he want? Finally, they rushed at him all together, to overwhelm him with pecks. I'm done for, said Drakestail to himself, when by good luck he remembered his comrade, friend Fox. And he cries, Reynard, Reynard, come out of your earth, or Drakestail's life is of little worth. Then friend Fox, who was only waiting for these words, hastens out, throws himself at the wicked fowls, and quick, quack, he tears them to pieces. So much so, at the end of 5 minutes, there was not one left alive. and Drakestail, quite content, began to sing again, "Quack, quack, quack, when shall I get my money back?" When the king, who was still at the table, heard this refrain, and the poultry woman came to tell him what had been going on in the yard, he was terribly angry. He ordered them to throw this cursed tail of a drake into the well, to make an end of him. It was done as he commanded. Drakestail was in despair of getting himself out of such a deep hole, when he remembered his lady friend, the ladder. "Ladder, ladder, come out of thy hold, or Drakestail's days will soon be told." My friend Ladder, who was only waiting for these words, hastens out, leans her 2 arms at the edge of the well, and then Drakestail climbs nimbly on her back, and hop, he is... Such a funny image. He just a ladder out of his gullet. Then Drakestail climbs nimbly on her back, and hop, he is in the yard, when he begins to sing more beautifully than ever. When the king, who was still at table and laughing at the good trick he had played his creditor, heard him again calling for his money, he became blue with rage. He commands that the furnace be heated, and this cursed tail of a drake thrown in. Thus he must surely be a sorcerer. Because he must certainly be a sorcerer. The furnace was soon hot, but this time Drakestail was not so frightened. He counted on his sweetheart, my friend River. "River, river, outward flow, or to death Drakestail must go." My friend River hastens out, and throws herself into the furnace, which she floods with all the people who had lightened it. Then she flows growling into the hall of the palace until she's more than 4 feet deep. And Drakestail, quite content, begins to swim, singing deafeningly, "Quack, quack, quack, when shall I get my money back?" The king was still at table, and thought himself quite sure of his game. But when he heard Drakestail singing again, and when they told him that all that had passed, he was furious, and got up from table brandishing his fists. "Bring him here! I'll cut his throat! Bring him here, quick!" cries he. And quickly 2 footmen run to fetch Drakestail. "At last," said the poor chap, going up the great stairs, "they have decided to receive me." Imagine his terror when on entering he sees the king as red as a turkey cock, with all his ministers attending him, standing there sword in hand. He thought that this time it was all up for him. Happily, he remembered that there was still one friend remaining, and he cried with a dying voice, "Wasp's nest, wasp's nest, make a sally, or Drakestail nevermore shall rally." And here it is that the scene changes. Bzz, bzz, bayonet them. The brave wasp's nest rushes out with all his wasps, and throw themselves on the infuriated king and his ministers, and sting them so fiercely in the face that they lose their heads, and not knowing where to hide themselves, they all jump pell-mell from the window and break their necks on the pavement. So there is Drakestail, much astonished, all alone in the big saloon, and master of the field. He couldn't get over it. Nevertheless, he remembered what he had come to do at the palace, and, improving the occasion, he set to work to hunt for his precious money. But in vain he rummaged in all the drawers, he found nothing. All had been spent. And frettering thus from room to room, he came at last to the one with the throne in it. And feeling weary, he sat himself down on it to think over his adventure. In the meanwhile, the people had found their king and his ministers with their feet in the air on the pavement, and they had gone into the palace to know how it had occurred. On entering the throne room, when the crowd saw that there was already someone on the royal seat, they broke out in cries of surprise and joy. "The king is dead! Long live the king! Heaven has sent this wondrous thing!" Drakestail, who was no longer surprised at anything, received the acclamations of the people as if he had never done anything else in all his life. A few of them certainly murmured that a drake's tail would make a fine king. Those who knew him replied that a canny drake's tail was a more worthy king than a spendthrift like the one who was lying on the pavement. In short, they ran and took the crown off the head of the dead king and placed it on that of Drakestail, whom it fitted like wax. Thus he became king. "And now," said he after the ceremony, "ladies and gentlemen, let's go to supper. I got pains in my tummy." That's a pretty good one. That was the best one so far, I think. Maybe those sillies was pretty good, but that one was pretty good. I like that one. He's got pains in his tummy. Gee. He keeps all those things in his stomach. That's just too funny. That's just too funny, too funny, too funny. Very silly individual with an eating disorder. Drakestail was silly. I think if the lover from the six sillies would have come across him, he would have said, "Well, there's a silly. There is a silly indeed." I did want to read this one, The Three Dwarves. Not too long. What's it compared to Drake's Tale? Not as long as Drake's Tale. The Three Dwarves. And it's got a nice little picture of some dwarves in a snowy cabin in the woods. Alright. The Three Dwarves is the next fairy tale for this bedtime. I hope everybody's relaxing here. I might need to calm it down a little bit. I feel like I got kind of high energy with that Drake's Tale one. This is a bedtime fairy tale, story time. It's for bed. So here's the ASMR noises. Here's a little ASMR for you ASMR heads. Okay. The Three Dwarves. There was once upon a time a man whose wife had died, and a woman whose husband had died. And the man had a daughter, and so had the woman. The two girls knew each other and used to go walking together. One day the woman turned to the man's daughter and said, "Go and tell your father that I want to marry him, and then every morning you shall wash in milk and drink wine, but my own daughter shall wash in water and drink water too." The girl went straight home and told her father what the woman had said. "What am I to do?" he said. "Getting married has its pleasures, but it has its worries too." At last, not being able to make up his mind, he took off his boot and, handing it to his daughter, said, "Take my boot. which has a hole in the sole. Hang it up on a nail in the hayloft, and pour water into it. If it holds water, I will marry again, but if it doesn't, I won't." The girl did as she was bid, but the water drew the hole together, and the boot filled up to the very top. So she went and told her father the result. He got up and went to see for himself, and when he saw that it was true and no mistake, he accepted his fate, proposed to the widow, and they were married at once. On the morning after the wedding, when the two girls got up, there was milk for the man's daughter to wash in, and wine for her to drink. But for the woman's daughter, only water to wash in, and only water to drink. Personally, I would rather take the water bath than the milk bath, but, to each their own. On the second morning, water to wash in and water to drink were standing for the man's daughter as well. On the third morning, water to wash in and water to drink were standing for the man's daughter, and milk to wash in and wine to drink for the woman's daughter, and so it remained. The woman hated her stepdaughter from the bottom of her heart, and did all she could to make her life miserable. Also, she was jealous, because the girl was so beautiful and charming, while her own daughter was ugly and repulsive. One winter's day, when there was a hard frost, and mountain and valley were covered with snow, the woman made a dress of paper, and calling the girl to her, said, "There, put on this dress, and go out into the wood and fetch me a basket of strawberries. I have a great longing to eat some." "Now, heaven help us," replied the stepdaughter. "Strawberries don't grow in winter. The earth is all frozen, and the snow has covered everything up. And why send me in a paper dress? It is cold outside, that your very breath freezes. The wind will cut through my dress, and the brambles tear it from my body." "How dare you contradict me?" said the stepmother. "Be off with you at once, and don't show your face again till you have filled the basket with strawberries." Then she gave her a hard crust of bread, saying, "That will be enough for you today." And she thought to herself, "The girl will certainly perish of hunger and cold outside, and I shan't be bothered with her any more." The girl was so obedient that she put on the paper dress and set out with her little basket. There was nothing but snow far and near, and not a green blade of grass to be seen anywhere. When she came to the wood, she saw a little house, and out of it peered 3 little dwarfs. She wished them good day, and knocked modestly at the door. They called out to her to enter, so she stepped in and sat down in the chimney corner, wishing to warm herself and eat her breakfast. At once the dwarfs said, "Give us some too." "Gladly," she said, and breaking her crust in 2, she gave them half. Then they asked her what she was doing in the depths of winter in her thin dress. "Oh," she answered, "I have been sent out to get a basket full of strawberries, and I daren't show my face again at home till I bring them with me." When she had finished her bread, they gave her a broom, and told her to sweep away the snow from the back door. As soon as she left the room to do so, the 3 little men consulted what they should do to give her as a reward for being so sweet and good, and for sharing her last crust with them. The first said, "My gift is that every day she shall grow prettier." The second, "My gift is that every time she opens her mouth, a piece of gold shall fall out." And the third, "My gift is that a king shall come and take her for his wife." The girl, in the meantime, was doing as the dwarfs had bidden her, and was sweeping the snow away from the back door. And what do you think she found there but heaps of fine ripe strawberries that showed out dark red against the white snow? She joyfully picked enough to fill her basket, thanked the little men for their kindness, shook hands with them, and ran home to bring her stepmother what she had asked for. When she walked in and said, "Good morning," a piece of gold fell out of her mouth. Then she told what had happened to her in the woods, and at every word pieces of gold dropped from her mouth, so that the room was soon covered with them. "Boy, I wish my wife dropped gold every time she talked. I'd be a millionaire. Am I right, men?" "She surely got more money than wit to throw gold about like that," said her stepsister, but in her secret heart she was very jealous, and determined that she too would go to the wood and look for strawberries. But her mother refused to let her go, saying, "My dear child, it is far too cold. You might freeze to death." The girl, however, left her no peace, so she was forced at last to give in, but she insisted on making her a beautiful fur cloak and giving her bread and butter and cakes to eat on the way. The girl went straight to the little house in the wood, and, as before, the three little men were looking out of the window. She took no notice of them, and without so much as "by your leave" or "with your leave," she flounced into the room, sat herself down at the fire, and began to eat her bread and butter and cakes. "Give us some," cried the dwarfs, but she answered, "No, I won't. There's hardly enough for myself." "There's hardly enough for myself, so catch me giving you any." When she had finished eating, they said, "There's a broom for you. Go and clear up outside our back door." "I'll see myself further," she answered rudely. "Do it yourselves. I'm not your servant." When she saw that they did not mean to give her anything, she left the house by the front door. Then the three little men consulted what they should do to her, because she was so nasty and had such an evil, covetous heart, that she grudged everybody their good fortune. The first said, "My gift is that every day she shall grow uglier." The second, "My gift is that every time she speaks, a toad shall jump out of her mouth." And the third, "My gift is that she shall die a most miserable death." The girl searched for strawberries, but she found none, and returned home in a very bad temper. When she opened her mouth to tell her mother what had befallen her in the wood, a toad jumped out, so that everyone was quite disgusted with her. Then the stepmother was more furious than ever, and did nothing but plot mischief against the man's daughter, who was daily growing more and more beautiful. At last, one day, the wicked woman took a large pot, put it on the fire, and boiled some yarn in it. When it was well scalded, she hung it round the poor girl's shoulder, and, giving her an axe, she bade her break a hole in the frozen river and rinse the yarn in it. Her stepdaughter obeyed as usual, and went and broke a hole in the ice. When she was in the act of wringing out the yarn, a magnificent carriage passed, with the king sitting inside. The carriage stopped, and the king asked, "My child, who are you, and what in the wide world are you doing there?" "I am only a poor girl," she answered, "and I am rinsing out my yarn in the river." Then the king was sorry for her, and when he saw how beautiful she was, he said, "Would you like to come with me?" "Most gladly," she replied, for she was glad to get out of the sight of her stepmother and sister. So she stepped into the carriage and drove away with the king, and when they reached his palace, the wedding was celebrated with much splendor. So all turned out just as the three little dwarfs had said, and after a year the queen gave birth to a little son. When her stepmother heard of her good fortune, she came to the palace with her daughter by way of paying a call, and took up her abode there. Now one day, when the king was out and nobody else near, the wicked woman took the queen by her head, and the daughter took her by her heels, and they dragged her from the bed, and flung her out of the window into the stream which flowed beneath it. Then the stepmother laid her ugly daughter in the queen's place, and covered her up with the clothes, so that nothing of hers was seen. When the king came home and wished to speak to his wife, the old woman called out, "Quietly, quietly, this will never do. Your wife is in a fever. You must let her rest today." The king suspected no evil, and didn't come again till next morning. When he spoke to his wife, and she answered him, instead of the usual piece of gold, a toad jumped out of her mouth. Then he asked what it meant, and the old woman told him it was nothing but the result of the fever, and that she would soon be all right again. But the same evening the scullion saw a duck swimming up the gutter, saying, "What does the king, I pray you, tell? Is he awake, or sleeps he well?" And as he gave no reply, it said, "And all my guests, are they asleep?" And the scullion answered, "One and all they slumber deep." Then the duck went on, "And what about my baby dear?" And he answered, "Oh, it sleeps soundly, never fear." Then the duck assumed the queen's shape, went up to the child's room, tucked him up comfortably in his cradle, and then swam back down the gutter again in the likeness of a duck. This was repeated for 2 nights, and on the third the duck said to the scullion, "Go and tell the king to take his sword and swing it 3 times over me on the threshold." The scullion did as the creature bade him, and the king came with his sword and swung it 3 times over the bird, and lo and behold, his wife stood before him once more, alive and blooming as ever. The king rejoiced greatly, but he kept the queen in hiding till the Sunday on which the child was to be christened. After the christening he said, "What punishment does that person deserve who drags another out of bed and throws him or her, as the case may be, into the water?" Then the wicked old stepmother answered, "No better fate than to put into a barrel lined with sharp nails and rolled down the hill into the water." "You have pronounced your own doom," says the king, and he ordered a barrel to be lined with sharp nails, and in it he put the old woman and her daughter. Then the lid was fastened down securely, and the barrel was rolled down the hill till it fell into the river. The end. Kind of went off at the end there, as the kids would say. Yeah. I don't know what a scullion is. Deserves to be. If somebody asks you, here's the moral of that story. If somebody asks you what the punishment should be for a crime that you know you did, give a light sentence. Because you never know. They're probably gonna pull something like that. I'm gonna look up what a scullion is so that we can all learn something new today. Unless you know what a scullion is. A scullion. A servant assigned to the most menial kitchen tasks. A scallion.
Scullion.
I can't hear it because I'm scullion. Well, now we know. A servant in the kitchen doing the most menial tasks is a scallion. Ooh, 8:45. Getting a little late. I'm thinking one more. One more fairy tale, bedtime fairy tale here. Tuck yourselves into bed here. Tuck yourself. Get comfy. What should the last one be? 2 viewers. Probably Commander and Zepster. Let's see. I did want to read the 12 Brothers, because I know that one. But maybe one I don't know. Hey, there's a picture of Draketail here. I like Draketail. He was a good guy. The Good Little Mouse. That was kind of long. 3 Princesses of Whiteland. Bushy Bride. Bushy Bride. That one sounds interesting. Who doesn't like a bushy bride? Ooh, 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 ooh. The picture on this one is real good. Real good picture on this one here. Real good picture on this one here. Giant heads. 3 giant heads with a woman kind of touching one of them. Man. I'll do impressions of these 3 giant heads. That's my impression of the 3 giant heads. Bushy Bride. This is probably the last story. Ooh, Little Snowdrop has is a Snow White apparently. Little Snowdrop is apparently the original name of Snow White, because this story has mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all. But that's Little Snowdrop. Here's Bushy Bride. Once upon a time, there was a widower who had a son and a daughter by his first marriage. Both were good children and loved each other dearly. Some time after, the man married a widow who had a daughter by her first husband, and she was both ugly and bad like her mother. So from the day the new wife came into the house, there was no peace for her stepchildren in any corner. And at last the lad thought he'd best go out into the world and try to earn his own bread. And when he had wandered a little, he came to a king's palace, and got a place under the coachman. And quick and willing he was, and the horses he looked after were so sleek and clean that their coats shone again. But the sister who stayed at home was treated worse than bad. Both her stepmother and stepsister were always at her, and wherever she was, and whatever she did, they scolded and snarled so. The poor lassie hadn't an hour's peace. All the hard work she was forced to do, and early and late she got nothing but bad words, and little food besides. So one day they had sent her to the burn to fetch water. And what do you think? Up popped an ugly, ugly head out of the pool and said, "Wash me, you lassie." "Yes, with all my heart I'll wash you," said the lassie. So she began to wash and scrub the ugly head, but truth to say, she thought it nasty work. Well, as soon as she had done washing it, up popped another head out of the pool, and this was uglier still. "Brush me, you lassie," said the head. "Yes, with all my heart I'll brush you." And with this she took in hand the matted locks, and you may fancy she hadn't very pleasant work with them. But when she had got over that, if a third head didn't pop up out of that pool, and this was far more ugly and loathsome than both the others put together. "Kiss me, you lassie." "Yes, I'll kiss you," said the lassie, and she did it too, though she thought it the worst work she had ever had to do in her life. Then the heads began to chatter together, and each asked what they should do for the lassie who was so kind and gentle. It's the exact same story as the last one. "That she be the prettiest lassie in the world, and as fair as the bright day," said the first head. It's exactly the same story. "The gold shall drop from her hair every time she brushes it," said the second head. "That gold shall fall from her mouth every time she speaks," said the third. So, when the lassie came home looking so lovely and beaming as the bright day itself, her stepmother and her stepsister got more and more cross, and they got worse still when she began to talk, and they saw how golden guineas fell from her mouth. As for the stepmother, she got so mad with rage, she chased the lassie off into the pigsty. That was the right place for all her gold stuff, but as for coming into the house, she wouldn't hear of it. Well, it wasn't for long before the stepmother wished her own daughter to go burn to fetch wood. So when she came to the water's edge with her buckets, up popped the first head. "Wash me, you lassie," it said. "The de'il wash you," said the stepdaughter. "Brush So the second head popped up. "Brush me, you lassie," it said. "The de'il brush you," said the stepdaughter. So it went down to the bottom, and the third head popped up. "Kiss me, you lassie," said the head. "The de'il kiss you, you pig snout," said the girl. Then the heads chattered together again, and asked what they'd do to the girl who was so spiteful and cross-grained. And they all agreed she should have a nose 4 ells long, and a snout 3 ells long, and a pine bush right in the midst of her forehead, and every time she spoke, ashes were to fall out of her mouth. So, when she got home with her buckets, she bawled out to her mother, "Open the door!" "Open it yourself, my darling child," said the mother. "I can't reach it because of my nose," said the daughter. So, when the mother came out and saw her, you may fancy what a way she was in, and how she screamed and groaned. But, for all that, there were the nose and the snout and the pine bush, and they got no smaller for all her grief. Now the brother, who had got the place in the king's stable, had taken a little sketch of his sister, which he carried away with him, and every morning and every evening he knelt down before the picture and prayed to our Lord for his sister, whom he loved so dearly. The other grooms had heard him praying, so they peeped through the keyhole of his room, and there they saw him on his knees before the picture. So they went about saying how the lad every morning and every evening knelt down and prayed to an idol which he had, and at last they went to the king himself and begged him only to peep through the keyhole, and then his majesty would see the lad and what things he did. At first the king wouldn't believe it, but at last they talked him over, and he crept on tiptoe to the door and peeped in. Yes, there was the lad on his knees before the picture, which hung on the wall, praying with clasped hands. "Open the door!" called out the king, but the lad didn't hear him. So the king called out in a louder voice, but the lad was so deep in his prayers he couldn't hear him this time either. "Open the door, I say!" roared out the king. "It's I, the king, who wants to come in." Well, up jumped the lad and ran to the door and unlocked it, but in his hurry he forgot to hide the picture. But when the king came in and saw the picture, he stood there as if he were fettered, and couldn't stir from the spot. So lovely he thought the picture. So lovely a woman as this isn't in all the wild world, said the king. But the lad told him she was his sister, whom he had drawn, and if she wasn't prettier than that, at least she wasn't uglier. "Well, if she's so lovely," said the king, "I'll have her for my queen." And then he ordered the lad to set off home that minute, and not be long on the road either. So the lad promised to make as much haste as he could, and started off from the king's palace. When the brother came to fetch his sister, the stepmother and stepsister said they must go too. So they all set out, and the good lassie had a casket in which she kept her gold, and a little dog whose name was Little Flo. Those two things were all her mother left her, and when they had gone a while, they came to a lake which they had to cross. So the brother sat down at the helm, and the stepmother and the two girls sat in the bows. And so they sailed a long way. At last they caught sight of land. "There," said the brother, "where you see the white strand yonder, that's where we're to land." And as he said this, he pointed across the water. "What is it my brother says?" asked the good lassie. "He says you must throw your casket overboard," said the stepmother. "Well, when my brother says it, I must do it," said the lassie, and overboard went the casket. When they had sailed a bit further, the brother pointed across the lake. "There, you see the castle we're going to?" "What is it my brother says?" asked the lassie. "He says now you must throw your little dog overboard," says the stepmother. Then the lassie wept, and she was sore grieved, for Little Flo was the dearest thing she had in the world. But at last she threw him overboard. "When my brother says it, I must do it, but heaven knows how it hurts me to throw you over, Little Flo," she said. So they sailed on a good bit still. "There you see the king coming down to meet us," said the brother, and pointed toward the strand. "What is it my brother says?" asked the lassie. "Now he says you must make haste, and throw yourself overboard," said the stepmother. Well, the lassie wept and moaned, but when her brother told her to do that, she thought she ought to do it, and so she leapt down into the lake. But when they came to the palace, and the king saw the loathly bride with a nose 4 ells long, and a snout 3 ells long, and a pine bush in the midst of her forehead, he was quite scared out of his wits. But the wedding was all ready, both in brewing and baking, and there sat all the wedding guests waiting for the bride, and so the king couldn't help himself, but was forced to take her, for better or for worse. But angry he was that anyone can forgive him. And so he had the brother thrown into a pit full of snakes. Well, the first Thursday evening after the wedding, about midnight, in came a lovely lady into the palace kitchen, and begged the kitchen maid who slept there so prettily to lend her a brush. That she got, and then she brushed her hair, and as she brushed, down dropped gold. A little dog was at her heel, and to him she said, "Run out, Little Flo, and see if it will soon be day." Run out. This she said 3 times, And the third time she sent the dog, it was just about the time the dawn begins to peep. Then she had to go, but as went she sung, "Out on you, little bushy bride, lying so warm by the king's left side, while I on sand and gravel sleep, and over my brother adlers creep, and all without a tear. Now I come twice more, and then never again." So next morning the kitchen maid told what she had seen and heard, and the king said he'd watch himself next Thursday night in the kitchen and see if it were true, and as soon as it got dark, out he went into the kitchen to the kitchen maid. But all he could do, and however much he rubbed his eyes and tried to keep himself awake, it was no good, for the bushy bride chaunted and sang till his eyes closed. And so when the lovely lady came, there he slept and snored. This time too, as before, she borrowed a brush and brushed her hair till the gold dropped, and sent her dog out 3 times, and as soon as it was grey dawn, away she went singing the same words, and adding, "Now I come once more, and then never again." The third Thursday evening, the king said he would watch again, and he set 2 men to hold him, one under each arm, who were to shake and jog him every time he wanted to fall asleep, and 2 men he set to watch his bushy bride. But when the night wore on, the bushy bride began to chaunt and sing, and so that his eyes began to wink, and his head hung down on his shoulders. Then in came the lovely lady, and got the brush, and brushed her hair till the gold dropped from it. After that she sent little Flo out again to see if it would soon be day, and this she did 3 times. The third time it began to get grey in the east. Then she sang, "Out on you, ugly bushy bride, lying so warm by the king's left side, while I on sand and gravel sleep, and over my brother adders creep, and all without a tear." "Now I come back nevermore," she said, and went toward the door. But the 2 men who held the king under the arms clenched his hands together, and put a knife into his grasp, and so somehow or other they got him to cut her in her little finger, and drew blood. Then the true bride was freed, and the king woke up, and she told him now the whole story, and how her stepmother and sister had deceived her. So the king sent at once, and took her brother out of the pit of snakes, and the adders hadn't done him the least harm. But the stepmother and her daughter were thrown into it in his stead. And now no one can tell how glad the king was to be rid of that ugly bushy bride, and to get a queen who was so lovely and bright as the day itself. So the true wedding was held, and everyone talked of it over 7 kingdoms. And then the king drove to church in their coach, and little Flo went inside with them too. And when the blessing was given, they drove back again, and after that I saw nothing more of them. The end. I don't know why those snakes didn't bite that guy. I guess it is the story where 3 heads coming out of the lake was not the center of it. Was not the weirdest thing that happened. Dude got catfish so bad. Yeah, exactly. By the way, you've got more than just 2 listeners. According to this, it says I have 3 listeners. 3 viewers. Yeah, I don't know how. I don't know what this Twitch is all about, but 3 better than nothing. I'm glad to have it. For sure. For sure. Yeah, that story was almost exactly the same as the previous one in many, many ways. Fairy tales really do just have like 3 stories. I don't know. If I'm gonna do fairy tales again, I'm gonna have to find some real good ones, some real good ones. I don't know. Fairy tales are not usually my thing, but figured it's a good thing to start with. More than that, says Ceramic Green Chicken. Seems like more than 3. Well, there are at least 3 because there's 2 people talking. I don't know. Very strange. I don't know why the info can't be accurate. Seems like wouldn't be that hard to get the correct number, but whatever. Yeah, pretty good stories tonight. I like the 6 sillies, and that deathless guy. He was pretty cool. Baba Yaga. Strange tales to make their way into your dreams tonight. Try not to get too scared of the Baba Yaga and her chicken-legged house, or perhaps you'll dream that dwarves have given you a gift of gold. Make sure your dreams are something or other. I don't know. Okay. Loving the bit in old fairy tales where ugly people are also evil, just like in real life. It's true. That's why I'm the nicest guy in the world, because I'm clearly the most attractive. But I don't need to say that. That's self-evident. Yeah, it's always evil. It's always ugly and step. If you're a stepmother or stepsister or stepfather, usually stepmother, you're screwed. You're just a monster. I've heard that was a common trope in Roman stories, and that's where that comes from. That trope. Yeah, maybe I'll go and move. I'll try to find some mythology or something different for next stream. Because these fairy tales are interesting, but I don't know. They're for kids. Even though they're extremely violent. But really, kids literally play like warfare simulators all day. Like, usually Fortnite is like just a goofy warfare simulator. I think kids are okay with violence. I don't think it really bothers them all that much. I don't know. Oh, Rapunzel's in here. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. Yeah, I'm starting to get a little tired here. I think that was probably the last story. All right. The last story was a little repetitive. So I'll hit us with a classic. One last story, a classic, Rapunzel. Let's do some Rapunzel. I saw Tangled once. I gotta rewatch Tangled. Kitty. My chair's all creaky. One last story, a bonus. Rapunzel. Once upon a time there lived a man and his wife, who were very unhappy because they had no children. Then at last the woman came by a great hope that heaven was going to grant their desire. These good people had a little window at the back of their house, which looked out over the most lovely garden, full of all manner of beautiful flowers and vegetables. But the garden was surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared to enter it, for it belonged to a witch of great power, who was feared by the whole world. One day the woman stood at the window overlooking the garden, and saw there a bed full of the finest rampions. The leaves looked so fresh and green that she longed to eat them. The desire grew day by day, and just because she knew she couldn't possibly get any, she pined away and became pale and miserable. Women. Then her husband grew alarmed and asked her what it was that she longed for. "Oh," she answered, "if I don't get some rampion to eat out of that garden behind the house, I know I shall die." Women. The man, who loved her dearly, thought to himself, "Come, rather than let your wife die, you shall fetch her some rampion, no matter what the cost." So at dusk he climbed over the wall into the witch's garden, and hastily gathering a handful of rampion leaves, he returned with them to his wife. She made them into a salad, which tasted so good that by the next day her longing for the forbidden food was greater than ever. If she were to know any peace of mind, there was nothing for it but that her husband should climb over the garden wall again and fetch her some more. So at dusk over he got, but when he reached the other side he drew back in terror, for there, standing before him, was the old witch. "How can you dare," she said, with a wrathful glance, "climb into my garden and steal my rampion like a common thief? You shall suffer for your foolhardiness." "Oh," he implored, "grant me mercy rather than your wrath. What I have done I had to do. My wife saw your rampion from her window and conceived such a desire for it that she would certainly have died if she had not got some to eat." Then the witch's anger was a little appeased, and she said, "If it's as you say, then you may take as much rampion away with you as you like, but on one condition: that you give me the child your wife will shortly bring into the world. All shall go well with it, and I will look after it like a mother." The man, in his terror, agreed to everything she asked, and as soon as the child was born, the witch appeared, and having given it the name Rapunzel, which is the same as rampion, she carried it off with her. Rapunzel was the most beautiful child under the sun. When she was 12 years old, the witch shut her up in a tower in the middle of a great wood. And the tower had neither stairs nor doors, only high up at the very top a small window. When the old witch wanted to get in, she stood underneath and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair." For Rapunzel had wonderful long hair, and it was as fine as spun gold. Whenever she heard the witch's voice, she unloosed her plaits, and let her hair fall down 20 yards below, and the old witch climbed up by it. After they had lived like this for a few years, it happened one day that a prince was riding through the wood and passed by the tower. As he drew near it, he heard someone singing so sweetly that he stood still, spellbound and listening. It was Rapunzel, in her loneliness, trying to while away the time by letting her sweet voice ring out into the wood. The prince longed to see the owner of the voice, and sought for a door to the tower, but none was to be found. He rode home, but he was so haunted by the song he had heard that he returned every day to the wood and listened. One day, when he was standing thus behind a tree, he saw the old witch approach, and heard her call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair." Then Rapunzel let down her plaits, and the witch climbed up by them. "So that's the staircase, is it?" said the prince. "Then I too will climb it and try my luck." So on the following day at dusk he went to the foot of the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair." And as soon as she had let it down, the prince climbed up. At first Rapunzel was terrified when a man came in, for she had never seen one before. But the prince spoke to her so kindly, and told her at once that his heart had been so touched by her singing that he felt he should know no peace of mind till he had seen her. So Rapunzel forgot her fear, and when he asked her to have him for husband, she saw that he was young and handsome, and she said to herself, "I'll certainly be happier with him than with the old witch." So she put her hand on his and said, "Yes, I will gladly go with you. Only how am I to get down out of the tower? Every time you come to see me, you must bring a skein of silk with you, and I will make a ladder of them. And when it is finished, I will climb down by it, and you can take me away on your horse." They arranged that, till the ladder was ready, he was to come to her every evening, because the old woman was with her during the day. The old witch, of course, knew nothing of what was going on, till one day Rapunzel, not thinking of what she was about, turned to the witch and said, "How is it, good mother, that you are so much harder to pull up than the young prince? He is always with me in a few seconds." "Oh, you wicked child!" cried the witch. "What is this I hear? I thought I had hidden you safely from the world, and in spite of it you have managed to deceive me." In her wrath she seized Rapunzel's beautiful hair, wound it round and round her left hand, then grasping a pair of scissors in her right, snip, 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 off it came, and the beautiful plaits laid on the ground. And worse than this, she was so without mercy that she took Rapunzel to a lonely desert place, and there left her to live in loneliness and misery. But on the evening of the day in which she had driven poor Rapunzel away, the witch fastened the plaits onto a hook by the window, and when the prince came and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair," she let them down instead. And the prince climbed up as usual, but instead of his beloved Rapunzel, he found the old witch, who fixed her poisonous, evil eyes on him, and cried mockingly, "Ah, ah! You thought to find your lady love, but the pretty bird is no longer in the nest, and its song is dumb. The cat caught it, and will scratch out your eyes too. Rapunzel is lost to you forever. You will never see her again." The prince was beside himself with grief, and in his despair he leapt out of the tower, and though he escaped with his life, the thorns among which he fell pierced out his eyes. Then he wandered, blind and miserable, through the wood, eating nothing but roots and berries, and weeping and lamenting the loss of his lovely bride. Thus he wandered for year upon year, and wretched and unhappy as he could well be, until at last he came to the desert place where Rapunzel was living. Of a sudden he heard a voice which seemed strangely familiar to him. He walked eagerly in the direction of the sound, and, when he was quite close, Rapunzel saw and recognized, and fell on his neck and wept. But as she did so, two of her tears touched his eyes, and in a moment they became quite clear again, and he saw as well as he had ever done. Then he led her to his kingdom, where they were received with great joy, and where they lived happily ever after. The end. Pretty good one to end on. Pretty good. The ending of that one is almost like the ending of the Orpheus myth. Orpheus, where doesn't he? I know he. Doesn't he get? I know I'm not mixing up Oedipus here, but doesn't Orpheus also get blinded and wander the earth miserable after he lost his lady love? I don't know. See, that's why I gotta go. That's why we gotta do mythology, Greek mythology soon. Can't do Hamilton's mythology. That was published in like the 40s or something. I'll find the public domain collection of Greek myths. They definitely exist. I'll find something. All right. This was the Bedtime Fairy Tale Story Time. I hope everybody had a comfy reading and is well asleep by now. Tucked into bed. Don't let the bed bugs bite. May your dreams be pleasant, one and all. Good night, everybody.